It's good to be with you. As Jesus said, the one who perseveres to the end will be saved. So I hope you guys are ready for that. But eschatology is the last topic in the theological curriculum for good reason. It's the doctrine of last things, okay? Last things can be broken down at several points to mean several ways or dimensions to get at this topic. There is, first of all, cosmic eschatology, and that is what we usually think about eschatology. It's the course of world events. It's the destiny of the created order. Where's this world going? Those types of questions. Then there is the second dimension of it is called individual eschatology. Individual eschatology is the destiny of individuals. What happens to me when I die, or what happens to anyone when they die? It has questions like the Bema judgment. It has questions of resurrection, rapture, great tribulation, intermediate state. That's the question about what's the nature of my existence. Am I conscious? Do I sleep? Some heretical groups, that's what they believe. Most Orthodox traditions don't. In fact, not most, all Orthodox traditions believe it's a conscious existence awaiting resurrection, but it is in the presence of Christ for believers or in some other separated place for unbelievers until resurrection. Ultimate questions of heaven and hell. Now you see that these questions, the individual and the cosmic, they overlap. Okay, questions down there for individual are very easily have cosmic significance. When the rapture happens, that's going to be a worldwide event, okay, and it's going to mark a particular movement in the world's story, the course of the world's story. But eschatology in general as a topic, as a subject, is something that is highly sensationalized these days. You get things, that's not that clear, but that's supposed to be Albrecht Dürer's woodcut of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? You get talks about what Jesus said, the signs of the end. Okay, there will be famines, there will be holocausts, cataclysmic things, earthquakes, there'll be all sorts of bio stuff, and you know, everyone makes you want to get into your bunker because this guy's showing up. Okay, Aphrodite's child. He's 666, that's the point of that one. And then there's guys like this one a couple years ago, Harold Camping, do you remember that? We already passed his little no sign down there in the corner, but I didn't get a slide for this, but just when you thought it was safe to come out of your bunker, did you know that the Pope that just was installed in the Catholic, he's the apocalyptic Pope? Because there was a 12th century monk, Irish monk St. Malachi, who made a series of prophecies regarding popes that have had uncanny parallel to the popes. And the last one that he had any kind of statement that related to was Benedict. So the one that we have now, Pope Francis, there's no prophecy, or he was prophesied to be the apocalyptic pope, the one after the one that he gave something to. So it's the last one, just when you thought you could come out of your bunker, right? We still have this. There's the Mayan calendar. What is the latest thing? We're all afraid of asteroids now, okay? And NASA's telling us, what's your best hope in an asteroid? Remember what they said? Pray. There's the last word from our scientific. So the end of the world is something that rivets, the human person. And why is that? I think some of that is because we are future-oriented beings. Everything you do is aimed at the future. You're sitting through this conference for some future goal. Maybe it's to check a box. I did this, I'm in the program. I have to finish this, maybe it's for learning, but whatever. You brushed your teeth, hopefully, this morning, with the future end that you don't go to the dentist to have your teeth yanked out of your head, right? Everything we do is we are hope. That's why hope is so important in Scripture too. And so the reason God tells us a good bit about the future is because He made us and He knows how we're wired. That if we don't have something from the Creator, the right view of the future, we're going to invent something or go for some other counterfeit that some other person invents. So why does eschatology matter? A couple of points here. Eschatology is not a topic that gets a lot of airtime in church these days. Sermon series, I don't know, how many of you have heard series on heaven lately? Or hell? Even less do we talk about hell. It's part of the, maybe it's part of the cultural pluralism, tolerance. We don't want to be, exclusivistic, and hell and talk like that. That assumes certain absolutes and certain right and wrong language that culture doesn't embrace. Scripture tells us reasons why God has told us the future. A great portion of Scripture is futuristic. Over a third of it is futuristic, is prophetic. That's a lot of it. And you just can't resolve that to, the margins. God put it in there, and we need to know why. That means He wants us to study it. It's part of the curriculum. So, God alone, He wants to teach us that He alone has power of the future. There will be others who come and say, I'm the Christ, who will be offering all sorts of end world scenarios, world end scenarios. God wants to tell His people will know. And this is one of the ways He says He's better than all other gods. I alone know the future, the end from the beginning. What's another reason? There will be pretenders. Because we are future-oriented beings, human beings, we're going to be drawn to something we've got to know. And so we will have people that make it up. And that's why God told Moses, through Moses, that Israel should seek the future from God's voice, not the voice of diviners, mediums, witches, and things like that. But God would speak through His people. Jesus said, see to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ. Many. 2 Corinthians 11 says there's going to be other Jesuses preached, even. Okay? We will invent something. Knowledge of the future shapes the present. Because of what you think about how this thing goes down, what you think about death, that's going to impact how you live right now. What you think gives your purpose here. Eschatology is the thing that contributes the story-wide narrative, or the Bible-wide story. And we're at a certain place of the story. And what you think about is coming up is going to determine what you think about your role right now is. What you're supposed to be up to. What's the purpose of the church? Let alone my individual person. What am I? I'm a member of the church, but what has God left us here for? Those are all questions, your eschatology. And so whether you have it explicitly taught, eschatology is kind of like your operating system. It's in the background, always working, okay? It's framing the choices you make at a more surface level. But it's back there. And so it's important so that we get this thing, at least God's perspective, going on this. So what does it say? How should it shape us? We need to understand that we are going to give an account, that we're not the end game here. There's one who has called us to be stewards, who has given us resources and asked us to occupy profitably with them for Him. We are servants of another here. Last one there, it's about purity. What kind of people should we be? Purity. We know what the end team looks like, who wins, and it's better to be on the winning team in this deal, okay? And that winning team has a character. It has an ethos, a team culture, and it's called purity. Knowledge of the future shapes the present also by giving us endurance and perseverance, motivation. Paul used it on his Corinthian folks. He said, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing your toil is not... Why? Because of the what you know about the future. That's why we know toil is not in vain right now. Labor, strive, cleanse, all of these verbs in the New Testament, they're aimed at the future that we read about that we should be doing now. They're all in light of the future. A couple of other things here. It gives perspective to world events. What do you make of 1948 and the birth of an Israelite state, nation state in the Judea area of the world? Your eschatology is going to inform. For some, they would say that's an accident of history, has nothing connected with the Bible. For others, they would say it could be, because the Bible foretells a reborn state, a reborn nation that will lead the world. Now, this state over there is a secular state right now. They are not God's people yet in the fullest sense because they don't see their Messiah. There are some Jewish folks, we call them Messianic Jews, Jews for Jesus, chosen people, ministries, all those kind of groups. Minister to those folks, are those folks. There are some of those kind of Jews around today. What you think about them, what you think about their destiny and God's future for a nation is an eschatology question. You have some questions now about the church's mission. There would some say that the culture mandate is that they call it the Cultural Commission also. There are a good bunch of good folks who say that, look, the Great Commission of proclaiming the gospel is equal to the Culture Commission, which is to redeem and restore culture now. Was that so? That's a question eschatology helps you answer. Are they two commissions? Is there one? Is there a means and an end relationship to these two things? Those are eschatology. So, I want to introduce a concept to you, eschatology as recapitulatio. Irenaeus, 2nd century church father, he brings us this idea which is profoundly biblical. He only puts a word to it. There's an opposite of eschatology. You know your Greek well enough. What's the would be the opposite? If eschatology is the last things, what's the word for first? Protos. Theologian of the day over there. Whoever said that? Protology. Okay? Protology is the study of the first things. And so if we're telling a Bible-wide story, here's eschatology talking about the end. The first is going to be very important for setting the tone of what the end looks like if recapitulatio is true. In other words, if Irenaeus, and I think he is right, says the Bible story is bringing us back and in large measure bringing us, and even some measure, enhancing what Adam was supposed to do but didn't get very far, then the first part of the story is going to be very important for understanding the nature of the last part of the story. That's why the earliest chapters of Genesis, Genesis 1 through 12, are for theologians. That's their playground, their sandbox. They love that. That's where all the themes of the Bible that tie off in Revelation, that's where they all start. So this idea of recapitulatio is, we're going to follow this a little bit through here in this presentation, the story. Give you the main outlines of the story, but we first got to look at the intention. What was God's intention for the first creation? Why did He make? Well, you always have to use the Sunday school answer for everything that anyone could. This is a little tip for all Bible classes. The glory of God is the kind of all heuristic rubric that answers about every question. Just say the glory of God, okay? The glory of God is, so we always have to, because that is the ultimate project. God is after His glory project. He will not share that. You read in the prophets, He will not share that with anybody. He will get it. That's what He's all about. That's why He made you, me. That's why He has the church. That's why He made Israel at that time. That's why He has all of His. It's all about His glory, but we need to go deeper. What does the glory look like? What specifically? Okay, one of the things we know is a kingdom. The story is about a kingdom. Who doesn't love kingdom stories? I mean, Shrek is all about a kingdom, right? Lord Farquaad in his perfect world. This Bible story is a story of the kingdom, and I'm putting this out here because there's different tellings of this that I think another telling of what the Bible is about, you might hear it's the story of redemption. I would say, yes, that's a big part of this story, but that's not the ultimate story. When does redemption start in Genesis? Is it in Genesis 1:1? Or the first chapter? Or the second chapter? Redemption starts in chapter 3, when you have something get broken, something get lost. That's the fall. So the redemption story is a restoration of something that only begins in chapter 3. If you look at the whole Bible's history or the whole Bible's story, take it off to the last book, Revelation, when is redemption over? It's over in the end of chapter 20, where you have a great white throne. The living and the dead are judged. Death and Hades give up their dead, and all the dust is settled. But what about 21 and 22? There's no redemption there. It's all heaven. So we need a theme of the Bible that is going to be able to cover all of the data. Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. And redemption is an important theme, but it's just a sub-theme. And that is going to help us to understand some things too, okay? In other words, the Bible's message is not just about me getting saved or getting the elect saved in some systems. It's not. Because we are saved to do something, okay? And that's where kingdom is a more helpful kind of topic. So why do I get any biblical justification for that? Creation is an act of divine fiat. If you look at Psalm 95, the Psalms, the writings are a commentary of all of Israel. And the story of Israel that Israel tells starts in Genesis at creation. Moses, the great prophet of Israel, writes this. And Psalm 95 talks about he is the king, he is the Lord above all gods, and it talks about his ownership of what he's made. And so it was a kingly act there in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That was a king doing that. Another thing in the early part of the story is the king makes an image, and that's Adam and Eve, male and female, verse 27. In the image of God he made them, male and female. Verse 28 says he blesses them and he commands them to do 5 things. Be fruitful, multiply, fill, rule, and subdue. These are all very fruitful topics for Scripture. The ruling and subduing is not just about, ordering the world, planting the Garden of Eden, extending the Garden of Eden. It includes ruling and subduing evil. You see, God had always intended to take out his adversary. You know who God's adversary is? Satan. God intended to move against Satan through human beings, through Adam and Eve. And that's why the second Adam comes, and he is the seed of the woman. That's not by accident. That is by human calling. Jesus was a God-man. Man had something to do that the first Adam didn't accomplish. Martin Luther said that Adam and Eve, they're in paradise, but they didn't even make it out into the afternoon before they sinned, the first day. Adam, instead of being the master of God's enemy, Satan, even in the angelic world, became the slave of him. And all the effects of that. And so God moves and brings in a second Adam. But the image was to rule and subdue. We see another answer about what is the nature of what God creates, and this story is about. It's a kingdom for blessing. This is a powerful blessing curse is a powerful dynamic in the early parts of Genesis. In the first narrative, God blesses the Sabbath, which is the seventh day. He blesses the man and the woman, and he blesses animals. What's the difference between those three things? man, humanity, animal world, and the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a different kind of entity. It's a time period. The other things are objects. The time period that he blesses is the end of the story. We kind of can get anthropocentric and think the creation, human beings, are the highest point of the story. I'd say, nuh-uh. That's a profound theological word too. Nuh-uh. Okay? Nuh-uh in that, no, that's day 6. You could say we're the highest part of the created order, but we're not the highest part of the story. The highest part of the story, where the story is going to day 7. And that's the Sabbath day, and God blesses it. Blessing means, okay, to empower for prosperity and flourishing. When God blesses, that's what He's intending, and what He's made it, He's resourced it to do, is to be blessed. Okay? He creates a Sabbath without evil. That's what we were intended. We were intended to live without evil. So that's where the story is going. The kingdom reign, therefore, becomes the final story. Here's the full statement of the recapitulatio theme. That's the theme of the Bible. God's rule or reign over His creation through us. And that's the way it ends, too. If you go to the book of Revelation, Revelation 22:5, that's exactly what it says. Our occupation is forever. Any of you ever been afraid that heaven would be boring? I was. I'd rather go to Disneyland, okay, than go to heaven. I'm speaking as to what I kind of thought when I was in junior high school, because I thought heaven would be an endless, forever worship service. I didn't want that, you know. Okay, I understand as a Christian, you got to be on with that sometime, but forever going to church? No. Okay. No, the last word for us, and we will reign forever and ever. Whatever reign means, it didn't mean going to church in the first creation. His fellowship with God was completely satisfying to what God had made him. All of the faculties, all of the abilities, the talents, those were all satisfied. And so heaven is aimed at that, and it's called reign. So we need to fill out our concepts of what heaven will be and what reigning is too. Adam was doing it till he sinned. So the story becomes, as we move throughout Genesis, it becomes highly tied with notions of covenant and Torah. And so I'm going to give you a couple of highlights of the covenant Torah story. And then the last part of what we're going to talk about is our place in this. Okay? But first little part of the covenant story. Abraham. This is where the blessing theme comes back. Very interesting way. How many times do you see in this charter of Abraham, verses 1 through 3 of chapter 12, do you see a form of the word bless there? They're all underlined. Count them, there's 5 of them. God repeats this. This word is just popping up all over in the charter. This is the first time he comes into the scene of history, is Genesis 12, 1 through 3. And blessing is now all over the place. Look at the interesting parallel at a literary level. Up to Genesis 12, where Abraham shows up, you have 5 curses. Curse has entered the story now since Adam and Eve went the wrong way and became the slave of sin. But there are 5 curse pronouncements. The serpent is cursed, the ground is cursed, Cain gets cursed, cursed is the ground again, and cursed is Canaan. They're all cursed. Let's get back here with Abraham. Oops, he's not coming up. Why doesn't he want to come up? There's blessing. 5 blessings meet 5 curses. This is the kind of thing that you also need to be aware of. The Bible has a literary level. You need to be aware of what's on the surface, but there are rich things to be had when you probe and look at the structure of the way the story's told. Okay? This tells me blessing and curse is something God is communicating to us. It's a story of blessing, and it's a redeeming of curse. And Abraham's going to be a key guy to do that. Okay? Let's go back here now to start moving ahead. The next major part of the story, covenant story, is the creation of a nation, and it is to be a tutor for us, to teach us things. This is New Testament. Paul says Israel is our pedagogue or our tutor. Supposed to guide the way. Well, you can look at that at several levels. It's supposed to show us, Israel was supposed to show us something about our need of Christ. You cannot do this in your flesh. You cannot walk the Christian life. If you are, you will become a legalist or you'll dump it, because it won't work. It won't work. It's supposed to teach us something about God. When God made a nation, you ask yourself, why did God need a nation? He had his people. They were living in Egypt. They were still his guys. Why does he need to organize them as a nation now? Is a very important question. They have to teach us something as a nation. Teach us somewhat. They teach us about judgment. You look in the prophets, they recount the purpose of Israel. Israel's history is going to show the world the glory of God. Remember, he's after a glory project. And the glory of God is to show off his attributes, who he is. And Israel, God says, because of their treachery, because of their betrayal of the covenant and their sin and their apostasy, their idolatry, I will send them into exile, and the world will know about my ideas of holiness. The world will know what I think about treachery, what I think about sins. They're going to know it's a reflection of God, what he does with this nation. He's also going to do something with them in the future that will show God off. He will show God, the world, the nations, his mercy when he restores them. This the world hasn't seen. Even in what's over there right now, the world, you count the 20th century with Israel? Jews, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, all of the wars relative to the standing of the establishment of that state. What are Jews today? They are still only showing us the judgment of God. They are not showing his mercy yet. Even that place over there. There's still a something yet for the world. Look at this passage from Ezekiel. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God, because I made them go into exile among the nations, and then gathered them again to their own land. I will leave none of them there any longer. That passage goes on, talks about them dwelling securely in their land. You might say they're in their land, but they are not dwelling securely. Far from it. So we haven't had this part yet. I think we've got some of it in the works. We move on to the story quickly. David is the next major covenant move. He tells us something about the second Adam who's supposed to come. And we see that fulfilled when Luke talks about Christ. And the Lord will give him, who's that? That's spoken to Jesus' mom, Mary, about Jesus, the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom will have no end. Last part of the covenant story before we get to our place in the story is a new covenant. This is the one that's for us. It's only called new one time in the Old Testament, and that's in the Jeremiah passage there. Okay? But if you look on, you will see that the new covenant is something we know about already, at least in part. It includes these kinds of things. There will be a new love for God. Why? Because the laws now, God's teaching, God's way is written in our heart. It's not outside us. It will be organic and intrinsic, come from the inside. You will hear something and you will say, yes, that's right. Something, namely, that God says, that is of his reality, his truth. And when the world says something else, you will say, no, that is not, because you will know it from the inside. And you will be drawn, like a baby is to grow. These are images the New Testament uses. You'll be drawn to your new life from the inside because now your wiring, your DNA is made to grow that way, not the other. We know about this. It's a new enablement from the Spirit, what the Spirit does with this. He's the one who writes the law. He's the one who is now the power source telling me what's Romans 8 say he is doing to me. He is bearing witness. He's bearing testimony to whom? Me. To my spirit that I am a child of God. See, that's what he's doing now. When you are in different circumstances, he's there saying, that's you. That's good for you. That's good for you. No, that's not you. You're heaven. You're a child of God. You're not of earth. That is in the operating system now of your heart too. That's new covenant. A new non-mediated access to God. We don't have to go to a temple in Jerusalem at a certain time of year through a certain kind of class of people to do certain things. No. We are the temple now. We are the Holy of Holies, actually, Paul says to the Corinthians. That makes this the temple. That makes the temple really mobile. Goes wherever I go. It defines what's holy differently also. I sanctify the ground. Any new covenant believer sanctifies the ground where they go. You're sitting in a holy chair now. You did a priestly thing this morning when you ate breakfast. Priests do those. You are now this kind of thing. So this whole language has now, we're direct access. Cataclysmic change of the ages happened. We celebrate it coming up. This new covenant started in the life of Jesus when he was on the cross and the temple veil rent, was torn, top to bottom, opening access. That means the old system's done. We're into something new now, and that was at the cross. Jesus started the new covenant, made it available here for us. That's a couple of other things here. It is the final resolution of the sin problem. And that's significant. Verse 34 lists, 33 and 34 list all of these benefits of the new covenants, but it talks about this one in a different way. It says, because I will forgive their sins. Here's the basis upon which the new covenant works. God solves the sin problem, and that points to the cross. Okay? That's why the suffering servant needed to come, and he needed to bear the transgressions of the many, and that's Jesus. So Jesus is new covenant. The suffering servant is new covenant. All of this. A couple of other things that are missed on the new covenant. The new covenant, it does not talk just about my atonement, my personal getting the vertical thing right with God. It is social and cosmic, and there's eschatology, is new covenant. A restored social order. Human society is restored at all levels. Family, community, national by the Messianic King. The national we haven't seen yet. We're still waiting for that. We can start in the church working toward restored individuals, families, and an alternate society that the church is. But the nation commissioned the church will never do. That's why we still need a restored Israelite nation to lead us as a to show the world what a theocracy looks like. They're not ready to do that yet, but God has something for them to do that. And the creation itself. You look at these passages 31 to 40, God will talk about when he does the new covenant, the created order will flourish and be blessed.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.